This is One on One. Hi, I'm Steve Adubato. We are coming to you from Shelburne, Vermont. Why? Well, this is part of our Right from the Start NJ initiative. We're here in Vermont. You can hear what's going on behind us. There's a conference. This conference is the Turrell Fund Day for Children. The theme is on the importance of love in early childhood. That is the theme that comes from Fred Rogers. There's a documentary that you should check out about Fred Rogers. He's been talked about a lot here. His connection to children, his impact on children at PBS. And so lots of the conversations we're having are with people who understand these issues very well. And we're joined by Mark Sustic, who's Executive Director, Young Tradition of Vermont, and also a trustee of the Turrell Fund. Good to see you, Mark.
Thank you for having me.
Tell folks who may hear what's going on around us in another room, why this conference is so important when it comes to early childhood.
Well, it's a variety of purposes for the conference. One is it's our one opportunity a year to have the Turrell Fund represented in Vermont. As you may know, the Turrell Fund supports programs, activities for young children and their families in New Jersey as well as Vermont.
And in Jersey, it is in fact Right from the Start, and you'll see
exactly.
our website.
Yeah. So it's an opportunity to bring us up here, to bring the Turrell Fund up here. Although I'm a Vermont trustee, I'm already here, but not a lot of the trustees and the staff for the Turrell Fund get a chance to come to Vermont, and this is a chance to do that. It's also a chance to be seen and heard, to focus on some topics that we might all be interested in. We have our philanthropic partners from Vermont here, and so it's a kind of a convention of philanthropists, service providers who get funded by the foundation. And it's also a chance for folks to find out about the Turrell Fund and what we're interested in, and why maybe there will be some funding opportunities for them.
So it's interesting. I mentioned Fred Rogers, and in 1968, Fred Rogers broke very important ground in public broadcasting and in children's media overall. And so I mention him, Mark, because you have said that that's what Fred Rogers did. That's what children's programming should be.
Yeah.
But you've also said that today media is different. And you've said that screen time is an issue. I'll give you a quote from you. You'll talk about it. We live in a time saturated with screens. Some of that time should be spent connecting screen time to real life experiences and discussions. Break that down. And what does that have to do with 0 to 3?
Yeah. Well, because our environment is so saturated with media, with screens, whether it's a phone or an iPad or a television or whatever it might be, we have some evidence that an overuse of that is not particularly good developmentally for infants and toddlers. In fact, the American Academy of Pediatrics has come out with a recommendation that children should be exposed to no more than an hour of screen time per day. What we know from various studies that children are spending 2, 3, 4 hours in front of a screen. So there's really not a whole lot of use for a child to have a screen at that point, unless it's an interaction with a parent or with an adult, a caring adult.
Give us a real life example.
Yeah. So let's say a child. Well, of course, one of the exceptions for the American Academy of Pediatrics is a conversation with a serviceman a dad who might be overseas. So that's okay.
Let's take that off the table.
Yeah. All right. So it's an interaction. Let's talk about books being an avenue toward the real world.
Right.
A book will open up some interest, some area of interest that a child and a parent might be able to explore further. So a child and a parent might be looking at something that's interesting on the screen and bring that into real life. Maybe take it to a book. Maybe take it to go to a museum or go to a park or whatever it is that might be interesting to that
and
child.
And that's 0 to 3, because Right from the Start NJ focuses on infants and toddlers.
Yeah.
Are we talking about infants and toddlers in screen time?
Well, we shouldn't.
We shouldn't be.
Yeah, we shouldn't be. Yeah, it's really not a usefulness for it. I think the thing that I always say is that what we can all back up to, if we find a place to agree, is that children should be happy, healthy, successful. And I say that partly because of what I believe, but also had lots of conversations with families about that specific target for hopes and dreams that they have for their children. And it usually comes down to some version of being happy, healthy, and successful. I say if that doesn't get us there, if the screen time doesn't get us to be happy, healthy, successful, then we have to question whether or not it's the right thing to do. There's another measure, it comes from medicine, do no harm. There's some evidence that the developmental trajectory of children that spend a lot of time with screen time from infancy to older do more poorly on developmental tasks later. So we've got some evidence that maybe screen time isn't a good thing to do. So why risk doing that? Spending more time with it.
But Mark, sorry for interrupting. The other piece of this is if you're concerned about the whole standardized testing question in this way.
Yeah.
You said that if we are in fact using technology to get kids ready for educational evaluations and standardized testing, is that really what we should be doing?
No.
And that's a developmentalist issue as well.
Of course. I mean, it relates to the screen time issue. We had the Turrell Fund had a proposal that somebody, without identifying who it was, a proposal to buy computers to prepare the children to be able to take the test. Standardized tests, to be able to know if they were doing well. So not only are we teaching to the test, but we're buying equipment. We're being asked to pay for equipment that would allow children to take the test that is for a very narrow range of academically oriented things. One of the things that we know about assessment is that it's not just about math or science or literacy. There's a whole bunch of things about what happens in early childhood development that contributes to children being successful.
That you don't find out on a standardized test.
You don't find out on a standardized test. You know, I think of standardized tests and screen time very much like junk food. A little bit of it is okay. You don't want it, but you don't want to have a steady diet.
An over-reliance?
An over-reliance of it. So in standardized testing, you don't want to have just standardized testing that just looks at a certain range, a narrow range of abilities. You want a wider range of abilities, and the way that we find out about that is through more sort of work sampling or portfolio assessment or an ongoing assessment by a teacher. Any teacher who's worth their salt is assessing at the same time they're teaching.
Why do you think we are as obsessed as we seem to be with standardized testing?
Well, we've been satisfied, and I would not myself, but I think as a culture we've become satisfied with test scores as a measure of how well children are doing.
The measure.
The measure. The exclusive measure. And that's the bad part of it. It's not, and particularly with testing, the younger the child is, the less reliable the measure is on a standardized test. It doesn't tell us how that child's going to be doing in kindergarten or beyond.
Let me do this. By the way, as a locator, I want to let you know, if you're watching us right now or listening to us on the audio side, we are coming to you from the Turrell Fund Day for Children here in Shelburne, Vermont. We're in Shelburne Farms right now in a place called Coach Barn.
This is the Coach Barn.
Amazing place.
Yeah. Do you know the story of this place?
Real quick, what's the short version?
All right, so the Shelburne Farms, it was the Webb family, which owned a majority of the lumbering industry in New England, and the Vanderbilts, who owned the railroads.
The Vanderbilts?
The Vanderbilts, married. They had a marriage here. A couple of the descendants of both of those families married here. What you see here, this beautiful space, was a wedding gift as a summer home for this marriage that was given as a gift.
So how do we wind up here having a conference on children?
Because in order to, the family could no longer sustain this as a private enterprise. The only way, they were going to lose it, or they had to change it to a nonprofit educational organization. And they've been working on that for 30 or 40 years and been quite successful in refurbishing the inn, refurbishing the buildings, making it available to folks like the Turrell Fund to do educational conferences. So that's what gets us here.
Well, I'm glad we're here, and I'm glad we're talking to you, Mark, and a whole range of people who care deeply about infants and toddlers.
Well, same.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
Well done.
All right, thanks.
One-on-One with Steve Adubato has been a production of the Caucus Educational Corporation, celebrating over 30 years of broadcast excellence. Funding for this edition of One-on-One with Steve Adubato has been provided by RWJ Barnabas Health, Choose New Jersey, NJM Insurance Group, the New Jersey Economic Development Authority, the Turrell Fund, supporting Right from the Start NJ, the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation, and by the Russell Berry Foundation. Promotional support provided by AM 970 The Answer, and by NorthJersey.com and Local IQ. Transportation provided by Airbrook Limousine, serving the metropolitan New York, New Jersey area.